Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. We are starting one more live stream, and today is Wednesday, June the 3rd, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. And I'm gonna ask you for a favor. Let us know if you can see us. We are using a new software, a new streaming software, and I'm unsure if it is working fine. I believe it is working fine on Instagram, but I'm sure about YouTube. So if you're accessing our live stream through YouTube, please let me know. All right, I believe we are live both on YouTube and Instagram and maybe Facebook. So let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me, so we can get started with our live stream. And to get started, we're gonna take a look. We're gonna take a look at the news, and we're gonna take a look at the Brazilian news. And now you should see my screen over here, and this time I'm using Chrome. And as you probably know, when you use Chrome, there is a feature. If you right click using your mouse, you are able to translate content into English. And therefore, you see right now Estadão. Estadão is a traditional Brazilian newspaper, and this is the main headline. We cannot accept the treatment that the United States gave it to Brazil this week, says Lula. And President Lula is talking about the classification of the two main organized crime rings in Brazil as terrorist organizations. There was more stuff to it. There was also a discussion about Pix. Pix is a payment platform we have in Brazil. I would say revolutionary for sure. And the United States believes that this platform is being subsidized by the Brazilian government, and it's hurting big time the U.S. card companies such as Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. So there is a bunch of moving parts in this dispute, but the bottom line is Lula's administration is once again at odds with the United States. And President also said that Marco Rubio is a frustrated Latin American, and again criticized the Bolsonaro family without naming them. There is also some discussion if President Lula has suggested that Flávio Bolsonaro, who's the son of former President Jair Bolsonaro, should be hanged, right? Like he was making an analogy to a chapter in Brazilian history, and some people are interpreting as he was suggesting that the folk should be hanged. So a lot of emotions at this time from the Brazilian side. You can also see this is like an editorial from Estadão saying Trump, instead of uniting the country, is acting more and more like a bandit in chief, right? So as you can see, it's not only the President Lula administration who's aggravated by the United States, and that's what's going on as of today. All right. Thank you for confirming. I see here some chat, some confirmation. I appreciate it. Jonathan McMillan, I see you. Thank you for showing up, Jonathan. Ricardo Paxton, I see and hear you. Thank you, Ricardo, on YouTube. Jonathan, with the humiliation of the Iran war, does the Brazilian government worry about a made-up crisis by the United States to oust President Lula? There you go, Jonathan. Thank you for chiming in. Yes, I mean, Iran war, it doesn't seem to be going the way as expected by the United States for sure. And yes, I mean, it looks like there is some alignment between President Trump and the Bolsonaro family to strengthen the position of Bolsonaro family. My opinion, without taking sides, more about the dynamics of the dispute, is that President Lula has a lead in this dispute. President Lula is in his third term and has a real chance of securing a fourth term in Brazil. In my opinion, honestly, like I wish it wasn't, President Lula and it wasn't anyone from the Bolsonaro family. I wish it would be like a third party, less polarizing and capable of uniting the Brazilian people towards, like development of our nation. But thank you for chiming in, Jonathan. Yes, we also have our folks here on Instagram. We have Rus, I think it's Rus Dev. Yes, we can see and hear you. All right, thank you, Russ. Let us know if there are topics of your interest to be discussed live. As usual, if you're here with us, you have a priority to suggest a topic of your interest to be discussed live. Whenever I don't see any topics, then I'm going to take something from our backlog to be discussed. So let me know if anything catches your attention. It could be related to immigration, it could be related to real estate in Brazil, or just things in general in Brazil or Portugal. All right, and just sharing, sometimes I do share some cases we have here at the firm. And this week, we have a client who is unfortunately starting a case, potentially litigation. We're going to do some attempt to settle amicably, but hopes are not high. And this client, unfortunately, she bought a property in Brazil, and because of the challenges in terms of registration and paperwork, she recorded the property on her friend's name. And guess what? Like at the beginning, everything was fine. Eventually, this friend started to rent this house in Brazil and stopped sharing the rental proceeds with this client. And now, a few years down the line, she had enough, and now she needs to move ahead with an attempt to recover the property, which unfortunately was recorded on the friend's name. So whenever there is a recording in Brazil, a real estate property recording in terms of a transaction, is very difficult for you to undo. But we also have a legal concept that it is well established in Brazil, which is against enriquecimento sem causa, right? That's how we say in Portuguese, enriquecimento sem causa. And a rough translation would be unjust enrichment, right? So that's a legal thesis that you can use sometimes, to identify a situation in which one party has enriched, you're getting something for nothing, right? Like, so the unjust enrichment means that one party is getting something without actually spending anything or doing anything. So that's one of the legal theses that could be potentially used in such circumstance. But that's very unfortunate, right? Like, and whenever I'm discussing real estate, some people say, well, it sounds like, you're scaring people in order to secure business, and that's not the point at all. Like, the point is actually to give you enough notice so you're gonna do things the right way. And listen, you don't need to hire our firm necessarily, right? Like, if you are hiring a licensed attorney in Brazil, you're going to be in a much better position than just handling things by yourself. I think that's the bottom line. All right, we have a Luckman. Luckman, good to see you over here. Please kindly discuss investment for citizenship in Brazil. All right, Luckman. So, for the investment route, there are typically two different routes. One route is going to be real estate, and the second route is going to be investment in a company. We typically like the investment in real estate better because it's much cleaner and much easier for you to keep over time. Investment in a company, on the other hand, the amounts are going to be substantially lower, but they are going to be very difficult for you to maintain over time. And unfortunately, there are many practitioners out there who will not give you this heads up, right? They are just going to identify that you're interested in investing in a Brazilian business, and you are willing to hire their services, and that's the bottom line, and then they are going to proceed. Here at the firm, Luckman, we typically look at the candidate, and we're going to, actually make sure that there is a good match between your profile and your plans in Brazil. And in our experience, most of the time, investment in a company is not going to make sense. It could be because of different reasons. The main ones are going to be, the challenge of a foreign citizen run a business in Brazil, given the red tape, bureaucracy, taxation, labor law. Labor law is a big, big issue for most people. Just to give you an example, right? You're going to need to hire employees in Brazil. And from the get-go, believe it or not, even in their first year, an employee will have a right for 30 days of paid vacation, meaning they are going to have 30 days. And this is not a cap. Like in the US, you typically have a number of personal days. It could be 9 days, it could be 19 days. It depends on where you are in your relationship with the company. But typically, there's going to be a cap. So let's say if you're sick for 1 week, you're going to be deducting days from your allotted 19 days or 9 days, right? In Brazil, believe it or not, the 30 days is just for vacation. So if the employee happens to get sick, I don't know, 50 days in a year, it means you're going to be paying this person for all of those 50 days plus the 30 days, right? And that's always paid by the employer, unless, let's say, if the employee gets to a point in which they can no longer work, then in this case, yes, they are going to be paid by a type of compensation fund from the government. But for shorter periods of time, almost always is going to be on the employer, right? So because of those challenges, look, man, we are typically recommending investment in real estate. Guess what? If you buy real estate in a compliant manner, and very important to highlight, there are many requirements for this to be done on a compliant manner. It's not just to buy a property. You need to buy the right type of property from the right type of seller and send the funds in a very specific manner. If you do everything by the books, you're going to secure the real estate investor visa. And after you accomplish that, the only thing you need to worry is to keep the property on your name. You could even like rent the property out. You could lend the property to friends. You could live in the property if you want. But the bottom line here is that, it's very easy to maintain your status. The company side is actually the opposite. So if you shut down this company a year or a couple of years down the line, guess what? You would no longer be entitled to keep the company investor visa. All right, let's see what else we have. We have a general principle. Boa tarde, senhor Oliveira. Boa tarde, general principle. If Brazil is subsidizing PIX, I bet the value of the data it's collecting exceeds the amount they are paying for it. That's a very interesting point, general principle. And it's a good point, right? And we have a new regulation, new legislation in Brazil addressing how private information should be treated. And but yes, there is always this concern, and this has been debated for a while in Brazil, right? Like the control over the PIX information, because basically nowadays most of the transactions in Brazil are running over the PIX track, meaning that the government can pretty much tell whatever you are doing, right? Like in the past, there would be checks, there would be credit cards, there would be cash payments. But today, the PIX platform is so prevailing that, yes, government can pretty much tell everything that you're doing nowadays with your money. That's a concern indeed. But PIX is so convenient that it's very difficult for people to avoid this platform. And very interesting. There is a kind of a tax update in Brazil as we speak, because of the very convoluted tax framework. There are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of different, taxes and fees and stuff related to taxation. So there is a big effort by both the Brazilian legislation, the Brazilian courts, and the Brazilian executive to kind of simplify taxation. And because nowadays the financial transactions are so concentrated on PIX and a few other means of payment, the Brazilian government is actually proposing to have the taxes deducted on the fly, meaning that if you're going to buy something, if you're going to send some money, there would be, and this is in the works, right? Like, I mean, it hasn't been settled yet, but that's a plan, that's a concept. The Brazilian government would be able to charge you the tax on the spot. So there is not even a need anymore for people like to issue an invoice or, to do paperwork to kind of collect the taxes. Everything in this new mindset would be done automatically. So that, yes, that supports the type of grip that the Brazilian government has nowadays on the financials, and PIX is just like something that I haven't seen anywhere else. Like, and in the U.S., yes, I'm familiar with all the money apps. There is Venmo, there is a Zelle, right? Zelle at the banking level is still free of charge, if I'm not mistaken. But it is like, I don't know, like, I mean, it is very different from PIX in a sense that PIX is very pervasive. Basically, every single bank, everyone is using PIX. And the example I give you sometimes is like if you are in Brazil and sometimes there is a beggar, right? And the beggar comes to you and say, listen, do you have any, pocket change so I can buy something at the deli? And you say, I don't have any cash on me. Almost always they're going to say, well, you can, send me a PIX. Believe it or not, the beggar is going to tell you to send a PIX. So this is going to show how prevailing PIX is in Brazil. And this is one of the core issues between the United States and Brazil, because from a trade perspective, from the United States perspective, it is like Brazil, the Brazilian government is subsidizing this means of payment. And guess what? The market share for American Express, Visa, and MasterCard is shrinking by the day. Not surprisingly, right? Because they do charge, as many of you probably know, they do charge a nice chunk of the money that is being paid. It could be like 2%, it could be 2.5%, it could be 3%. American Express is typically on the higher end. It could be, I don't know, like 4%. And whenever a vendor is accepting a PIX directly from the customer, they are paying 0% and to receive this whole chunk of money free of any fees, right? So you can tell that the market share for the U.S. Cards is declining big time. All right, general principle. Also, if you're not aware, you are sharing your desktop. At least you're. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, I appreciate that. All right, that's the new tool, general principle, and everyone else. I'm using a new streaming tool, and I'm trying to get a hold of it. Thank you for the heads up. Please keep doing so. And by the way, we're gonna take a quick look at Remax Nomad States. Remax Nomad States is based in Rio de Janeiro, but they are actually, helping our clients throughout Brazil, like through the Remax network. And we have several clients who have located their dream properties. If you need to get in touch with them, there you go. This is the contact information, both WhatsApp and email. Just take a screenshot, and there you go. All right, not sharing my desktop, hopefully general principle, but thank you for the heads up. All right, let's see what else we have. All right, nothing here that I can see. Maybe there is some time gap in terms of updating the chat. So I'm gonna take something here from our backlog. All right, okay, so how are Brazilians gonna celebrate the World Cup? Yeah, so the World Cup is gonna be happening in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. There are actually large Brazilian communities in those three countries, so there is not going to be any shortage of Brazilians to go to the matches. I think a big challenge is going to be the prices of the tickets is just like extremely expensive. Last time I heard about the prices, they were saying like the cheapest ticket I think for Texas was going to be something like 140 US dollars for I think Jordan and Scotland. I'm not sure if these are the two teams, but it would be like 140 per person. However, for the Brazilian for the Brazilian team matches, the cheapest one was 1,400, right? Because everybody wants to watch Brazil, and therefore this is going to cause an inflation, and that's just like for the beginning games, okay? And for like later games, then we're probably talking about several thousands of dollars. I don't know, maybe you have like some Brazilians who are going to be financed, getting a second mortgage to buy tickets. But this is really difficult for Brazilians to access. And I even heard, then I'm not sure if it is true or not, I think it was, in the Apple News, like there was a ticket being sold for $2 million for the final match. And it was a very good seat, like behind the goal. And it was being sold for, or being tried to be sold for $2 million, right? So crazy amounts. And I'm just curious, like what you guys are going to be doing. Like if you are watching us here, either through Instagram or YouTube, like what are your plans? Like, are you going to follow? And as you can probably tell, soccer and the World Cup for Brazilians is such a big thing. It's actually like a life event for most Brazilians. So we kind of remember all the past World Cups in different stages of our life. It is something really touching. And it does not matter if you really like soccer or not. For instance, I'm not really a big soccer fan. Like I'm not going to be watching, soccer games outside of the World Cup. But when it's the World Cup, it becomes a different type of event to us. And then, yes, we're going to be watching, we're going to be screaming, we're going to be cheering, we're going to be, 100% involved in those soccer matches. And very interestingly, like in Brazil, if you have a soccer match, of course, with the Brazilian team during work hours, typically businesses they are going to stop during that time so the employees can watch their games and enjoy the event. All right, we have Aaron. I need to renew my RNM before September the 3rd, but want to travel outside of Brazil before then. As long as I'm back in Brazil before you submit the application on my grantee web, everything will be fine. Yes, Aaron, there are some moving parts over there. A major one is like this. Whenever you're filing an application through my grantee web, the person must be in Brazil. So just for the sake of comparison, let's say if we're talking about the digital nomad, right? So the digital nomad, if you are in the US, you can file this application through a consulate. Not ideal because you're gonna need to show, for instance, you're gonna need to show health insurance with coverage in Brazil. Sometimes it's costly and you don't actually need it before you get the card, because once you get the card, you could get it in Brazil for much cheaper. But bottom line, we typically prefer applications done in Brazil. But for one to apply in Brazil, this person must be physically in Brazil. We saw it happening in the past for people, like to try to apply through the Migrante Web while you're abroad. And trust me, when they see systemically that you're not in Brazil, they are going to deny the application. So you're right. A first requirement, Aaron, is that you are in Brazil. In terms of the timeline, if you are renewing your RNM, I'm going to assume that the RNM is going to be valid through the period in which you are abroad. So if you are abroad and then your RNM is still good for you to return, no problem. Okay, now if your RNM is expired and you try to return, they are going to try to assess if you have any enough valid days from your regular status, right? We call it immigration year. And even before you ask me about the numbers, there is a major fact here. It's a kind of cumbersome calculation. There is a system that does not always work as it should. And there is always a chance of you facing trouble when returning to Brazil after you've been in Brazil under some type of residency, such as the digital nomad or the retirement. And therefore, our typically orientation is, listen, when you are in between, let's say if you have applied for a renewal or for a new type of residency, we typically recommend you to avoid traveling abroad. But I understand the distinction here. In your case, you are probably traveling and coming back under the current RNM, and then once you are in Brazil, that's when you're going to file for the new RNM. And then, yes, our typical recommendation is for you to wait until the new RNM is approved so you can, travel. And this is a question we have here sometimes, if there is a limit to how many times you can travel abroad and return. There is no limit, right? So if you have the digital nomad, if you have the retirement track, if you have the real estate investor track, any of those, if you want to travel to the US once a month, once a week, and come back, you are free to do so. All right, Jonathan, for someone of African American descent looking for a warmer alternative than the US, how is racial diversity and relations in Brazil throughout the country or states? Jonathan, that's an interesting question. I think that Brazil is much more accommodating in terms of racial, profiles and mixing. I remember when I was in my 20s, and I traveled to the U.S. Probably my first time as an adult. It was extremely surprising to me and maybe even unsettling to find out that there would be neighborhoods specific to a single racial profile, right? So there would be like a neighborhood in which African Americans would be the majority. There would be like neighborhoods in which Latinos would be the majority, and the same thing for the so-called white folks. And that was extremely surprising to me and unsettling, because there is hardly such a thing in Brazil. Okay, like I mean, you're never gonna see a neighborhood that is just like for that particular racial profile. And in the U.S., I understand it's not that there is a mandate. I think it's more like of a social connection between people that ends up establishing the neighborhood as is. But in Brazil, I never saw anything similar to what you see in the United States. All right. Now, this said, you still see some challenges in terms of representation of African Americans in some institutions or in some bodies, right? And that's a fact. That's something that we're still trying to handle through the affirmative action, which I understand it has been kind of retired in the United States, if you will, but the affirmative action in Brazil is still in force and being applied to different aspects of the civil life. For instance, if you are applying for a position, like you want to work at the government, they are going to have a certain quota that is going to be reserved for African Americans, right? The same thing in public universities and so on. So that's something that is being done in Brazil. Now, in terms of states, very mixed. Like if you are in Rio, if you are in São Paulo, I don't think you're going to have any issues. When you go further south, like when you go to Santa Catarina, when you go to Rio Grande do Sul, for some reason or for historical reasons, you're probably going to see less African Americans in the south area of the country, which was not colonized, but there was a very meaningful influx of Europeans, particularly from Germany, from Italy, from other nations, into those southern states. And so they are going to be less mixed than Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. And then when you move like to the northeast, there is a really interesting, healthy mix of racial profiles. Like many people, when they have this concern, they love Bahia. Bahia is a state in which there is a very strong tradition coming from Africa, right? So there would not be like African American or African Latino American of a kind, but is very accommodating. I see many clients who are concerned about getting access to a healthy profile of mixed races. They are gonna typically really like Bahia, okay? And then other states like Pernambuco, Rio Grande do Norte, also a healthy mix. When you get to Ceará, it's more interesting. It's like everybody would be kind of brown. I don't know if there is no such a race as a brown people, right? But this is a term sometimes I hear in other podcasts. And so people, when you look at them, you say, well, these people, they are not white, and they are not African American, right? Like there's something in between, and this is going to be prevailing in my experience, like in these more upper northern states, right? If we're talking about Amazon in general and the Amazon area, you have different states over there like Amazonas, you have Pará, you have Amapá, you have Roraima, and they have also an interesting mix. You're gonna see a lot of brown people, and you're gonna see a lot of people with indigenous traits. They're not gonna be, living in a tribe. They are gonna be living in society in general. But you're gonna see their traits. Their traits are gonna remind you of, like the original indigenous people of Brazil. All right, Jonathan, I hope that was helpful. Aaron, you have suggested starting the digital nomad renewal 60 days before expire. If I send all the documentation 60 days before, how close can we cut it before submitting on Migrant Web? Aaron, that's difficult for us to like work with this type of precision. Typically, when I say the 60 days is like for people to plan reasonably ahead of time. And I'm gonna give you an example. I have a client as of today, right? And I know it's not you because of the name. It's a different person. But this person was discussing with the firm, believe it or not. I think he was in his third consultation. He was discussing with the firm for 14 months, over a year, about his application under a digital nomad. And then he hired our service, believe it or not, like 10 days before a trip to Brazil. Okay, and not surprisingly, guess what? Now we are entangled with this client because he didn't bring the documents. It looks like the digital nomad is not really work for his purpose because now he needs to do some local work in Brazil, which is forbidden by the digital nomad. But the bottom line here, Aaron, is that 14 months for you to plan ahead of time. And then you're gonna get started 10 days before your travel date to Brazil, right? No good. So that's why we have the 60 days. Now, if you are a planner, which it may look it may be your case, Aaron, then you don't actually need all of those days ahead of time. For the digital nomad, typically the background check doesn't need to be on the FBI level. So I don't know if you are from a friendly state like New York in terms of background checks, that's something you can get in a few days, right? So depending on your specifics, you could be doing that thing 30, 20 days before deadline, right? Maybe 30 days. But it's very difficult for us, Aaron, to tell you the exact number of days, before we know your specifics, or even when we know your specifics, it's difficult for us to work with such precision, just because we have different cases running here at the firm. We have a timeline for the translator to get those documents back. So typically the 60 days, Aaron, is more like a kind of a ballpark estimate of how soon you should start working on your documents, but it is not like a deadline for sure. I would say if you would like to work with a deadline, I would say 20 days, 20 to 30 days would be the deadline for a digital nomad renewal. Okay. All right. What else we have? We have many people. We have Claudia. Claudia, how's it going? Claudia says hi. Hi, Claudia. Let us know what you are interested in. From Brazil. Here we are discussing Brazil, Portugal in general, Claudia. So if you have any questions, let us know. And by the way, I'm reading Claudia's comment from Instagram. For some reason, Instagram has a very specific type of streaming platform. So if you are on YouTube, you don't see the comments from Instagram and vice versa. All right. So if I'm reading something here and you don't see it, it is because it's not coming from your platform. All right, we have Christopher. Boa tarde, Dr. Luciano. Boa tarde, Christopher. How would your team coordinate real estate purchase services with Quinto Andar? Happy to direct the question to the office if it's not general enough for this forum. Obrigado. Christopher, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for the concern. Thank you for the courtesy. And yes, we've been working, like Quinto Andar nowadays. And for those of you who don't know, Quinto Andar is a real estate platform, right? It's not like a traditional real estate agency. It's more like a kind of startup. But at the end of the day, they still have like realtors who are working under their platform, and they try to follow certain standards for the transaction, Christopher. And maybe just to be focused here on my answer to you, first part of the answer, yes, we work with Quinto Andar all the time, right? Like, whenever the seller is being represented by Quinto Andar, we don't have any issues in terms of working with them, right? So that's the first part of the question. And maybe if I need to pick like an upside and a downside, the upside is that they typically will avoid those long shot transactions, okay? So in some places like Rio de Janeiro, very particular to Rio de Janeiro, you have a lot of, sellers willing to cut corners, presenting, unusual types of situation. And many times, unfortunately, being very transparent over here, proposing fraudulent transactions. For instance, they're selling an apartment for 1 million reais, and they want to declare to the Brazilian government that the property is being sold for 500, right? And that's for the purpose of, guess what, paying less taxes. But it is fraud, and it is a crime, and of course we would never agree to that. So Quinto Andar typically will filter out those crazier situations, all right? But even with Quinto Andar, sometimes, yes, we do have some need to bring this transaction to a certain way to be really appropriate for the foreign buyer, okay? So the upside for Quinto Andar is that they filter out the most concerning type of situations, not 100%, but the crazier ones, they do filter out in our experience, right? I can never say for all of them, but in our experience, they do an effort to filter out bad transactions. And this is the upside. The downside is that because they have a startup approach, they have a kind of workflow that's pre-designed, and sometimes there are inconsistencies in their workflow and the actual transaction, and it takes some time to get through like a manager over there, so the manager can actually understand the specific aspects of the transaction and allow the realtor to have changes, for instance, to the purchase agreement, right? So upside, like safer than other real estate agencies. Downside, they're kind of, stuck with certain procedures that unfortunately will not always work for a foreign citizen, but we work all the time. All right. In terms of how we coordinate, this is more from a practical perspective, Chris, and that works for Quinto Andar or anyone else, right? We typically get a couple of WhatsApp groups. As you probably know, WhatsApp is king in Brazil. Right nowadays, people will not even call each other. We're gonna only message over WhatsApp in Brazil. And what we do that works pretty well is to set up two separate WhatsApp groups. We set up one WhatsApp group with our client, so our client has unfiltered, clear communication with our team. And in this team is typically myself, a couple of leading team members in the real estate transaction. There is another couple of people who also work in the transaction from our side, plus yourself. So it's a group with typically 5 people if you're single. if you're married or if you have a partner and you want to bring the partner, like 6 people, right? So that's going to be one WhatsApp group. The second group is going to be with our team members and the realtor, because over there, that's where the bulk of the work is going to be done. And in my experience, like from beginning to end, you may see something like 500, believe it or not, 500 messages exchanged between our team and the realtor, right? Like it could be like, initial questions, discussions about the title. We always have like substantial amendments to a proposed purchase agreement. We work with the certificates of clearance. We advise you on how to move the money to Brazil. There are many things we do throughout the life cycle, but typically, this interaction is going to happen over those 2 WhatsApp groups. And additionally, if there are more sensitive topics during the life cycle of the transaction, then we're going to set up as many Zoom calls as needed, and that's going to depend on the buyer. Some buyers, they like to be more involved, and then yes, there is going to be more communication. Other buyers, they are going to say, listen, I'm hiring you, to lift this burden from my shoulders, so you do your thing and you just let me know where I need to sign, right? And we have those kind of different types of clients, and everybody else is going to be like in between, somewhere in this spectrum, and that's how we work. All right, we have Bagua. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Bagua. Hello, how are the options for residency by investment or digital nomad visa for someone from India, vis-a-vis other countries? Obrigado. Bagua, so, instead of getting into too many details like about those routes that you're asking, a question you're gonna be asking yourself before you even start this journey is whether you are in India or you are in Brazil, right? Because we have many clients, like unfortunately, okay, from India, Pakistan, like Egypt, some African countries. It's very tough for them to get a visitor visa to come to Brazil. So if you are in India, there is unfortunately an uphill battle for you to get any visas to Brazil. Okay, nowadays Brazil is really, turning the screws in terms of making more difficult for certain countries for citizens of certain countries to secure a visitor visa to Brazil. And if you apply for something like the digital nomad, unfortunately, even if you meet the requirements, guess what? They may still deny the visa. And a very, typical example is going to be the digital nomad. So if you are applying out of India through a Brazilian consulate or embassy, even if you're meeting the requirements, many times they look at your whole profile and they may say, you know what, this person, they are not really coming to Brazil to work as a digital nomad. They are coming to Brazil to stay for good. And therefore, they don't match the intent. And even though they have enough income, they have enough credentials, we're gonna deny the visa. Okay, so we see this type of situation very often. Now, for investment, there is, and just to, again, be very focused on our answer, there is a strategy that we've been using for some citizens with this challenge, right, in the Middle East, in other countries, which is the strategy of, the residency through investment in, guess what? In real estate, right? Because you're not going to be investing in a company from abroad. You're going to be you could be investing in real estate. And if you invest by real estate, we can typically represent you in the closing remotely, meaning that you would be buying this property from abroad. after this property is recorded on your name, money transfer to the seller, currency exchange paperwork mint, everything good, we apply on your behalf for the visa while you're still outside of Brazil. Like you haven't gotten to Brazil because you cannot, and I'm not telling you yourself, right? I'm just telling about this hypothetical scenario. So we get this visa pre-approved, and then we're gonna send the whole file to the Brazilian consulate in charge of your jurisdiction. And as of today, in every single case, it has been approved. Okay, it's never guaranteed, right? And there is a chance, and that's a conversation I have with every single client of this type. I say, listen, even after this whole journey, it is still possible that the consulate in charge of your jurisdiction would deny you the investor visa, right? We get it pre-approved in Brazil. We send the file to the consulate, but the consulate has the last word in terms of granting or not the visa. The good thing here is that the intent of living in Brazil is no longer a problem because, listen, if you bought a house and you are applying for the real estate investor visa, guess what? Your intent is actually to live in Brazil. So the intent, which is the most typical challenge for citizens from many countries, such as India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Myanmar, Egypt, many times the United Arab Emirates as well, if you're not an Emirati. So people from all of those places, they have like a track to overcome the intent challenge, okay? And this is gonna be the real estate investor visa, even if you are unable to come to Brazil, as long as you understand that it's not 100% guaranteed, even though up to today we never had a denial. All right, I hope that was helpful. James Rochas, olá amigo, tudo bem? Tudo bem, James? Good to see you over here. Is it common to renew digital nomad visa after one renewal? Should someone apply for a new digital nomad visa again inside of Brazil or another new renewal? Moro in Bahia. James, so we have clients who are successfully renewing the digital nomad for the third time, right? Third time. Okay, so my reading, right, and this is a recurring question, and it's so interesting. Like, we had another client another day, and it's a kind of special case, but he was saying, listen, I want to buy a house in Brazil, and I want to make sure I'm going to be able to live in this house, renewing the digital nomad forever, like, 30 years down the line. Can you guarantee we're gonna be able to renew? Of course not. So we don't guarantee, James, that you're gonna be able to renew even a year from now, right? Like, we are not heads of the Brazilian immigration, so we cannot guarantee anything. Anyone who says that they can guarantee anything, like, be aware of the promises, right? And what we can do is to tell you how this thing has been working so far and how it is working as of today. And as of today, you are free to renew as many times as you want. So we have clients, again, successfully renewing the digital nomad for the third time. Whether they are going to be able to renew for the fourth or not, we don't know. And the reason for that, like, if you just want to know a little bit about the background, regulations, the digital nomad, it was conceived under the prior federal administration, right? And the prior federal administration said, you know what, we're gonna have the digital nomad for one term, and then you can renew once, and that's it. So that was the framework for the digital nomad under, guess who? Former President Bolsonaro. President Bolsonaro was the one creating, right? It wasn't him, like it was like his administration created the digital nomad, and that was the idea. One term plus a single renewal, and that's what you see. Like if you ask AI, if you go right now, right, at least until like I don't know, a couple of months ago when we last checked, that's what ChatGPT is gonna tell you. ChatGPT is gonna say you can renew just once, right? Now the reality in the field is that yes, people can renew multiple times. Now there is nothing written anywhere in the government paperwork saying that you can renew multiple times. That's just like how the current administration, which by the way now under President Lula, is applying the digital nomad framework. So this is based on a practical interpretation of the current federal government. And my assumption is that if President Lula is re-elected, guess what? Most probably they would keep the same interpretation of the digital nomad framework, allowing you to renew indefinitely, right? But just like in the example I gave you, right? And believe it or not, this client of ours like sent that question in writing. Like, I mean, if it was being shared by a team member, I would think it was a joke, but it was not. Like, you know, the client was asking, you know, can you guarantee I'm going to be able to renew the digital nomad 30 years from now? That's not how things work in immigration, all right? And yes, so as of today, James, you're good to renew for a third time. If the federal administration changes, or even if the federal administration continues the same, but they change their understanding, then they could no longer allow you to renew the digital nomad. All right, James. But as of today, no worries about applying outside of Brazil. You should be just fine. All right. All right, Bagua, very helpful. Thank you, Bagua. Thank you for participating, and feel free to ask or to suggest topics of your interest. I'm taking a look here at Instagram. We have a few people participating, but they are not as talkative as our friends from YouTube. I don't know, maybe because from YouTube you can access on a computer. It's easier, you know, to type and chat. And through Instagram, many people are going to be accessing from their phones. It's not so easy, to participate. And I see here a user from Instagram. His name is Joaquim do Uruaú. I don't know if Joaquim do Uruaú is still with us, but Uruaú is, you know, like it may be the name for different areas in Brazil, but one of them is going to be a very special neighborhood in the state of Ceará, right? The state of Ceará is in the northeast of the country. Uruaú is about an hour and a half to the east side of Fortaleza, okay? And it's an amazing area. Like you have white dunes, you have an amazing area for kite surfing, and close to this area, there is now a project by Club Med, right? Like Club Med, for those of you who don't know, Club Med is an extremely high-end resort type of thing. They have, you know, different properties throughout the world, and now they have a project for the Uruaú area, right? The actual formal name of this region is Sucatinga, right? And they have a really nice project for this area. Okay, but yes, so that's gonna be it for today. I want to say thank you for your participation, for the very interesting topics we discussed. And our next live stream is going to be on next Wednesday. We're going to create, like, because of the new software, we haven't created the event for next Wednesday yet, but we're going to do right now. So if you want to make sure that you're going to be able to join us next Wednesday, you can just come to YouTube and you click on notify me. So when we start the live stream, you're going to receive a notice, and there you go. You're going to be with us again. And again, thank you for your participation and wishing you a blessed rest of your day.